This section now is the longest section of Chinmay Pradeep, and this is based on verse number 2. So we will chant verse number 2 and then go ahead. संस्कृतेर्वीक्ष्य हानिं च भारतस्य च दुःस्थितिं द्रवितं हृदयं यस्य वन्देऽहं तं महामुनिम्. So in Chinmay Pradeep we are following a story. First part you saw the 5 aspects of Gurudev's life, and whole Pradeep also is based on these 5 aspects. So this aspect is the, which aspect would you say this is? Verse number 2, from here till, let us say, the Mahavakya temples. Visionary? No. Partly you can say visionary, but no, but which 5 aspects of Gurudev's life does it depict? Sorry? No, spirituality, but see, there is a visionary, sannyasi, teacher, realized master, and Swami Chinmayananda. In these 5, what does this part of journey represent?
Seeker.
Teacher? No. This part represents his compassion as a sannyasi. Because we are following the story here that Gurudev started, this is not a chronological order of Gurudev's life. Okay? This is a story which we follow of Gurudev's life along with the decline of the Vedic culture as well as the revival of Vedic culture. So here it is that he is on a boulder. The story starts from here. In a place called Fakiristan. So in Gangotri, there is a place called Fakiristan, meaning place where all the sadhus and fakirs, they come together and they sit there and they have discussions on Vedanta, on scriptures. So Gurudev used to attend some of those because with Tapon Maharaj he had gone there and they would spend some time there studying Upanishads. But he found the discussion sometimes very dry and sometimes very vague. So he felt that this knowledge is so precious. Why is it not going down to the masses and why is it not touching the hearts of the people? So one day sitting on the banks of the Ganges in this Fakiristan, he moved away from Fakiristan and he went and sat. There he saw the flow of Mother Ganges. And that's where he felt inspired. So in his own words he says that he was doubting at that moment. What was he doubting? He says, can I do it? Can I face the educated class of India and bring to their faithless hearts a ray of understanding of our wondrous culture? Sitting on the banks of the roaring Ganga, I pondered the thought. None could argue against the eternal truth that man in essence is God. But could I explain it to others? This we have given a very crisp, short quote. Gurudev's explanation, if you see, his quote, if you see in Journey of a Master, is much bigger. He says that I shivered. He felt incompetent. He said, will I be able to do this? Can I take it to the masses? But then the answer came from Mother Ganga. So the answer is, I seem to hear the words in Mother Ganga's roar. Son, see me. Born in the Himalayas, I rush down to the plains, taking with me life and nourishment to all. Fulfillment of any possession is in sharing it with others. So here we have a boulder depicted symbolically, and this is the cutout of Gurudev. Any idea why this is in this type of a finish?
The boulder?
This is actually a steel. This is steel. But the steel has been given mirror finish so that it will reflect the audience also. So our idea was here that this is a reflective moment for Puja Gurudev. It's a wake-up call also. It is a moment that transformed his life and the moment that transformed the life of millions of people. The beginning was here. Can you and I find our identification with this? So when you see yourself in that, the idea is, can I identify with this feeling? Because Samskriter Vikshya Halimcha, when he saw the decline of the culture, he was very pained. He writes in one place that he went through the various ashrams and temples throughout the country and he felt disappointed at the stuff that was doled out in the name of spirituality. He really felt very pained that this glorious culture of ours and what is being given out to people. So the feeling is very important for a missionary work, for a selfless work also, because it is the feeling only which drives surrender in us. So he felt that, this glorious culture, why is it declining so badly? And people don't have respect towards that. People are not wanting to live that. So at this moment, when he thought that, he decided to go down. That part of the journey we will catch up later. Here we are going into a flashback where he thinks that what is the glorious culture of ours which has declined? What is the decline of the culture? As Karthik said, Gurudev always said, without culture, man is a vulture. Culture is just not the external food and the clothes and the mannerisms, etc. But it is the inner value system. The word for culture is Samskriti. And what is the basis of Samskriti? The basis of Samskriti is Dharma. If Dharma is not maintained, Samskriti cannot be maintained. Today what we want to do? We want to bring back culture without Dharma. Why? Because we have confused the word Dharma to be religious ritual. But it is not ritual. Dharma means Dharyate Anena iti Dharma. That which upholds, that which integrates, that which unites, that which binds, that is called Dharma. What will bind a person? What will bind all of us? Is there anything common that binds all of us
Values.
beyond the boundaries of caste, community, creed, gender?
Values.
Anything?
All humans. We are humans.
Okay, we are humans. But
Values that we
I
have.
would say even the distinction of a human, if you remove, what binds all the living beings? Love and happiness. Love is what binds all of us. Everybody seeks love and happiness only. So when we say dharma declines, the feeling of love declines. When the feeling of love will come? The feeling of love comes when there is identification with, where there is oneness. A mother and child feel one, no? So then there is love. A person feels one with the country, so there is patriotism. So where there is identification, there is oneness. Where there is oneness, there is love. When we love somebody, don't we want to follow values for them? Don't we want to be honest towards them? We want to be kind to them. We want to be selfless. We want to be forgiving. We want to be compassionate. So love leads to values. And those values in expression is my duty. Duty means I have a duty towards my father, towards my family, towards my country, towards my work. Those duties are not duties just imposed on us. The basis of all this is vision of oneness, love, values, duties. These four aspects constitute dharma proper. That's why the meaning of dharma also has, sometimes you say putra dharma, putri dharma, sakha dharma, that's the duties. Then sometimes you say dharma is values, virtues. Very few people actually talk about dharma in the sense of oneness and love. Highest dharma is to be loving and compassionate. That's why it's ahimsa paramo dharma. So when we say culture declines, what actually declines? Four aspects of dharma you saw. Which aspect declines maximum?
Love.
You have to speak little loudly.
Concern for others declining. Concern for others.
Concern for others is declining. In this four, where it comes?
Love. Love.
Love.
Love decline.
So why will concern for others decline? Selfishness. Oneness has declined. See, whenever oneness declines, no, the basic decline will start. All the others are symptoms, like Anupam said, no, it is one germ outside. What is the cause? The cause is oneness declines. So if you take a simple example, why did the Mahabharata war happen? The feeling of oneness that we are a Kuru family declined. When oneness declines, what happens? Selfishness will increase. So what does Dhritarashtra say? Mamakaha Pandavaha. These are my children, they are Pandu's children. Now oneness is gone. Oneness is gone, selfishness starts. Selfishness starts, love will decline. Love will decline, then values are not there. Why should I be honest to you? Why should I be caring? Why should I be compassionate? I won't be like that. Will I do my duty? I will not do my duty. I will live as I want. That is the basis of cultural decline, that the vision of oneness goes. And person who feels this, that person will strive to remove the root cause of decline. Bring back to the people the identification of oneness. Even in a country, you see, how many great masters struggled to bring this identification to us that we are one country. Till today. Even today we are like, this is my Tamil Nadu, that is my Maharashtra, this is my Kashmir, that is this, that is that. The feeling that I am an Indian and I am belonging to this whole country is mine, and whatever happens in this country I am responsible for it and I am a contributor to it. That feeling, then this is what will happen. Cultural decline will happen. So at every level we have to bring back oneness, integration. Advaita is that which brings the oneness at the highest level. That the self in us is the self in everything. And not only at the living beings level, non-living beings also. What does Vedanta say? The truth in us is the truth in this stone. There is no difference. Just imagine what a ego-crushing thing it is. You are equal to stone. Why? Sat in you is equal to Sat in the stone, hence proved. Two-line Vedanta it is. What we take 2 years to study and then whole life to live, finished in 2 lines. That's how Mahavakyas are. So Vedanta brings the oneness at that level. So if I revive Vedanta, what am I reviving? Absolute oneness. And is Vedanta limited to Hindus? Does Vedanta say that only the self in Hindus equal to the self in other Hindus? Everybody else is deluded fools. But the self in Hindus and self in Hindus is one. No, it doesn't say all that. Anybody it can be. Any caste, creed, community, culture, gender, whoever it is. Living, non-living. We have vision that we are an expression of that one truth. And what is that one truth? It is infinite. Not some small little truth. One kuti self inside me and one kuti self inside you, and that kuti self is nice. It doesn't work like that. Because people think like that. My Atma, no, my Atma inside, your Atma inside. That is one. It is not like that. Consciousness is infinite. That same consciousness appearing as all this. Like the waker is appearing as the whole dream world. It's not that waker is one small entity inside every dream character. The entire thing is an expression, including the physical structure. This body, we say 5 elements because we are seeing it through the senses. For the master, body also is Chaitanya only. It is an expression of consciousness only. We will see a wave and we will say big wave, small wave, foam, bubble, lather. But what is all that? Water only. Body also is consciousness. Mind also is consciousness. But from that standpoint. So, people like Gurudev, Shankaracharya ji, Vedavyasa, these are great masters who have come at different points in our culture to revive the culture. They did not go about telling people that, look, be honest, be good, do good, be kind, be compassionate. No, that will anyway happen. The moment they bring the understanding of Vedanta, it will happen. Have you ever heard Shankaracharya ji telling somebody? No. Vedavyasa, what did they do? They wrote the books, they wrote commentaries, they established various ashrams, temples. The sole objective is inspire oneness in the masses through whatever they do. That's the only one point of cultural revival. The essence is bring back the vision of oneness. You can bring back the vision of oneness at different levels. No, not everybody will be ready to understand Advaita Vedanta straight away. So you bring them at oneness level. You are one family, you are one state, you are one community, you are together Hindus, then you are one country, then you are all human beings. Then comes whole world. Vedanta goes to bigger level also. The entire universe is one. Slowly that identification has to increase. So cultural decline means the decline of oneness. Cultural revival means revival of oneness. Then everything else will follow. So here we had 4 questions. What is the decline of culture? Decline of culture means decline of oneness, increase of selfishness, decline of love, decline of values and duties. Whether I wear my traditional clothes or wear jeans or whatever it is, that's an external expression. There's nothing wrong in wearing a jeans. When I was in college, I used to participate in painting competition, Rangoli competition and all that. So in one of the painting competitions, I had drawn 2 scenes. One is a modern scene of youngsters wearing jeans and partying. Other is one traditional scene. And the third one was a combination of somebody who is a blend of both. Who is wearing maybe something traditional, but who is also being very modern, holding some gadget or whatever it is. Something I don't remember. So the caption there was, wear your jeans, Jeans, but don't wear off your cultural genes, Genes. That was the caption. You can wear whatever. Modernization, there is no problem. But forgetting our roots, the forgetting oneness. So when we say go back to your roots, what is the root of India? Don't say the way, unity in diversity, so many people are here, different language, different culture, different food, different this. That is an expression. The root of India is Advaita, oneness. That in spite of all these diversities, we feel we are bound by one culture, Vedic culture. Otherwise, geography is different, food is different, language is different, everything is different. No? And today we are fighting in the name of all these only. Somebody is fighting in the name of language, somebody is fighting in the name of geography, somebody is fighting in the name of some external rituals, somebody is fighting in the name of gender, ki men are allowed this, women are not allowed this. But essential oneness, one has forgotten. So, the decline of culture is decline of oneness. Now, Vedic culture, when it declined, what does that mean? The same principle you have to apply. In Vedic culture also, the sense of oneness went. All the other things that happened are an expression of that. So, if you see here, now you identify from here, this first panel, background, that is decline of the Vedic culture. Can you tell me where the decline is seen? No, I am not talking about second layer. Invasion and all is second layer. I am talking only about the first one, the backmost layer. So if you see one by one, so if you see this, You see this one person standing there offering Gayatri Mantra, doing the sun worship. This side, left side here. The house in the courtyard is standing.
Yeah.
That is symbolic of Vedic culture. Just to tell people that this is the Vedic times when we were worshipping the sun. We were not just idol worshippers. So that's a symbol of Vedic culture. And you will find here the society is divided by caste. So caste as a, by temperament is not a problem, but caste by birth is a big problem. So you will see here, these farmers are one side, Brahmanas are one side, Kshatriyas are one side, Shudras are one side, divided. One is caste system. Second is, you see here, there is a goat and there is one person with a sword. Animal rights, animal sacrifices, the lower form of Vedic knowledge, not Vedic knowledge, the lower form of Tantra, that was in lot of popularity at that time. You see, this is on Chandala. This person behind standing near it with a dog. The Chandala is supposed to be the worst, lower than a Shudra also. He's a dog eater. Meaning he's such a worst type of a character who will always be drinking. He will never be sane. His normal state is he is always drunk. And he walk also like that. Doesn't take bath. And he can kill the most faithful animal like a dog and eat. That low is the level of the evolution of that person. So this Chandala is there, then Chandala will always be shooed away. Then you see here, those people who are doing the Vedic sacrifices there, only selected people are allowed to do rituals. Women will not be allowed to do rituals. So you will see only men standing there, sitting there. Women have to be only in the houses. So their belief was women are fit only for, this is the decline. Please remember, Vedic times, when we come to the real Vedic culture, you will see there. So these two panels, if you study carefully, on the left if you see one decline, on the right you will see this was not there. That was the glorious culture, this is the decline. So women are restricted only to the household. In the Vedic time, women were teaching the Vedas. They were Guru Patnis, Rishi Patnis. They were doing Gayatri Mantra. So again you see here, only one man is standing here. That's a decline. The woman is not standing. So women are not allowed to do Gayatri Mantra. That's a decline. Vedic culture doesn't say women cannot do Gayatri Mantra. Very strange, no? The Devi who revealed the Gayatri Mantra, she is a woman, no? Then she should not have revealed the mantra, saying woman cannot reveal the mantra. The person who revealed the mantra is a Devi, but women cannot chant Gayatri Mantra. How? Earlier days they used to chant. See, there are specific times when they are not allowed told to chant. If they want to conceive and all, they will say don't chant. The vibration of that mantra will be too powerful, so don't chant. But otherwise, psychologically, one should not discriminate. So this is all the decline. So then you will see here, so women, both sides you see the women are restricted only to the housework. You know what was the traditional belief? Traditional belief is, woman does not even need to do rituals, does not need to do even puja. Serving the people in the house, she will get moksha. That's the traditional belief. Orthodox declined belief. It is man who is to be doing this upasana and all that because he gets his mind polluted going in the world outside, so he has to cleanse his mind. But woman is in the house only, and she by service alone she will get realization. And that's the traditional belief. So you see again there women are sitting only in the house. These kings and all, they will live in a separate area. People are not allowed to come there. In the Gurukul, women are not allowed to go and study there. This is all the decline. These are all the Shudras. They cannot stay with the whole group. These are the Vaishyas. Here you will see one Pandit practicing this untouchability and this, he is condemning a person of a lower caste from even entering the temple. So that is there. Then there are two other major things that happened. So this is Shankaracharya's time, where he revived the culture. Here you see Buddha. People converted, lots of Hindus converted to Buddhism because of this whole decline of Vedic culture. They didn't like it. And Buddha spoke about compassion, kindness, oneness, and they went. You also see one king here. This king has given up arms. That king is supposed to be a symbol of Ashoka. Painting wise he looks very terrible. You must understand this as Ashoka. This guy is supposed to be Ashoka, the great warrior who gave up Kshatriya Dharma. He gave up arms. And the invasions started in our country after that time. Till then, no, Alexander and all of them, they could not come inside. They had to go back. They came inside, they got defeated, they went back. But after Ashoka's time, major invasions have started coming inside. So the decline of Vedic culture is his decline of oneness, then the decline of basic dignity. All this happened. So the culture goes through tremendous decadence. As somebody said earlier, questioning, the spirit of questioning, inquiry, that was also not there, not encouraged. In the name of faith, the Brahmin supremacy was asserted. Whatever we say is the truth, you have to follow that. Scriptures are not given to all, so only few people. If you see there are supposed to be only Brahmins who are studying there. The other community people are not even allowed the Veda. So that monopoly of that knowledge happens. So all this is the decline. The first panel is the decline. Second reason of decline is the invasions. 1200 years plus the slavery mindset has come into the mind. Vedic times we were never slaves. We were creative people. But then invasions we allowed. And why did we allow invasions? Because we became greedy. We lost our value systems. It was the vision of oneness went. So you see here, in the order in which the invasions have happened, we have tried to depict. First one is Alexander. Second one is Ghazni. Alexander, Ghazni. Then this is supposed to be Mongols, Genghis Khan's troops. Then this is Abdali. Abdali, then invader, Mughal invader. Then this is the proper Mughals, Babur and all of them. What are they attacking? We have given here as the symbol of our culture is temple. You know the main reason why they attack temples?
Wealth.
Because the temple is the source of our strength and faith. And if you destroy your temple, if they destroy our temple, people will get scared. Any invader will do that. Whatever is the source of the strength of the people, they will go and destroy that. In our country, the source of strength was temple. And temple is not just the source of strength in terms of what we call just the presence of God. Temples were cultural learning centers. Temples used to run Ved Patashalas. Temples used to do Annadan. When there is a famine, drought, etc., the temple will do social service. So the temple became a community center for selfless work and for learning and for knowledge. Apart from spiritual, surrender, devotion and all that. So when they came and attacked the temples, they destroyed all that. Plus, temples were also repositories of wealth. Because people gave their wealth. This is for community. Now when they attack temple, just imagine such a simple way by which they get everything. They'll get wealth, they'll destroy spiritual faith of people, they destroy learning centers, they destroy this social service, everything destroyed just by attacking temple. How many temples have been destroyed? Can't imagine. You know, our cultural apathy is such that we still don't realize that what role a temple plays. Today it may be that temples are loaded with wealth and we may feel that what these temples are doing, they all are very rich temples and all that. But go into the heart of the matter, you will understand many things. And I'm not saying that we don't need to use that funds and the resources for betterment. We should do that. We should bring back our Vedic vision of temples, where they become knowledge centers. Where if you go and ask a Pandit why this is being done in my culture, he should know. What is written in the Veda, you please explain, he should know. He should question. How many temples have got destroyed? So many we don't even know their names. So many temples we have no idea they were even existing. And still today, we keep on debating why temple is required. And why Ram temple has to be rebuilt. Let us have communal harmony. We don't want Ram temple. It's not about Ram temple. Just as a temple, it's the place where he was born. It's our identity. And it was what was existing there, which was destroyed and something else was built to prove the supremacy of the invader. And just because we have accommodated the invader, does it mean that we compromise with our culture? Why? We will build a mosque nearby, no? There is no problem. We will only build and give. That is accommodativeness. Not at the cost of we losing our identity. Those aspects we have to understand. That's why we have depicted a temple here and we have depicted a South Indian temple here. Why? Because this is another point to understand. People in the north have paid a heavy price in this country. So many invasions have happened, the north has dealt with them. Even the Mughals, the amount of conversions they were doing to rise up against them, the Hindu families in the north sent one child and formed that whole Sikh community. And 10 gurus of the Sikhs, the amount of sacrifice they have done, unimaginable. You and I can't even think. So the culture in the south has got protected to a large extent. Not that invasions never happened till the south. They also happened, but it did not reach to that extent. Because by the time they finish with the north and come, half of them are very exhausted and tired. So, we have put here to understand this fact that externally the northern temples were attacked, destroyed, razed. But in South India, the cultural decline has happened much more than in North India in that sense of the rise of Brahmin superiority. That has also destroyed us much more. See, invasions have destroyed in one way, but till today are we not paying the price of that? Caste invasion, caste discrimination. Why the reservations etc. are there? It's meant for that only. Till today we are paying the price. By now it should have gone. Keep it on merit. But it is still there. So, this is the temple. This is one side of invasions. And again this is the other. What are those? This is again in the order of invasions only. Who invaded first? Dutch? Portuguese? French? British? I am not sure Dutch or Portuguese. I think it is Portuguese first and then Dutch. Portuguese first it is. Portuguese, Dutch, French and British. This is the order of invasions. Imagine what is to be 1200 years as a slave. The mindset of a slave, this country, the people have gone through. And that's why to wake them up from that also takes time. It's not easy. Because the morale has been destroyed so much, there is no inner strength, there is no feeling for that. One feels it's okay. One has accommodated that as a part of one's life. So it requires a lot of patience to awaken this cultural pride in the masses, to make them aware that what have you gone through and you don't need to be in this state. Because the sad part is, even after the British have gone, the invasion is still happening on us. We are still in that mindset only. colonial mindset. So, British, what they did. So this was two levels of decline what we spoke. One is Vedic level, other is the invasions. And third is this. The decline in the British time specifically. Because a lot of people still today think, the British did wonderful. They gave us postal system. They gave us railway system. They gave us law. They gave us education. They civilized us. They made us organized. Come on. We would have been much greater. It is like telling, a thief comes into your house, loots away everything and gives you a nice memento and goes. And that memento is also for what? It's an alarm. Suppose you just say, suppose it's an alarm. Timer like thing. So when you put it on, when that sound goes off, then you realize that nobody is in the house, so that fellow can come inside and loot you again and go. It is some such thing. The railways were built not for the convenience of Indians, they were built for their convenience. Recently one video has been going around, Shashi Tharoor. Listen to that. Then one will understand. So that what did the British do to us? We would have been actually far advanced than the British, what they did to us, if they had not destroyed our cultural pride. So what did these British people do? We have written a few things here. Communal violence. They created the division between Muslims and Hindus, North and South. Fight. That is continuing even today. They don't want us to be one. Maybe only the countries which are doing it that has changed, but it's the same thing. Westernization of education system and Sanskrit was removed. That they did. That was a master stroke. Anything else in this is secondary. The master stroke in this is this westernization of education and Sanskrit is removed. So you make people feel inferior for studying Sanskrit and you make people feel learning English. So elite class, intellectual elite class came about for that. Whose pastime is sit in clubhouses, sip some drinks and condemn the culture. Today also that is happening. Sitting somewhere, one will speak about culture, one will speak about Jallikattu, one will speak about Shani temple, one will speak about 20,000 things. Go to the ground and you will understand what is what. That we don't do. So that is the intellectual elite class who are contempt for this country, who will not find anything good about this country. That was their master stroke, where they made us feel absolutely low. Barbarians they made us feel basically. Then cultural imperialism. They imposed their culture on us. Their way of eating, drinking, clothing, speaking, everything. Which again is not external only, it is the mindset. Everything Indian is low, everything foreign is great. And today what is science doing? They are coming back to what we were. Sitting down and eating is so nice. Eating with the hands is very much beautiful. Yeah. You eat nicely, 5 hands. It will invoke your taste. What is that? Saliva. And there's some, what do you call that? Juices in the mouth will come. So many scientific reasons they will give. We were sitting and doing that already. Banana leaf, copper vessels. Our tradition in our culture has been to drink water filled in copper vessel and mud pot. They'll bring refrigerator. The natural refrigerators were there in our country. In a hot tropical country, we knew how to manage, how to live in, how to chill we knew. They came us and made us heat it up and then said, now you chill. What all people did, I tell you. Amount of drain, the wealth that they drain, you just see here. The draining of India's wealth, you just see in dollars, in billions. If London has to pay back to India, what will happen? They will be in debt for another 2,000-3,000 years minimum. Really. for the amount of wealth that they drained from this country, and the famine when it happened, the oppression of peasants and artisans, how many lakhs of farmers died? Who speaks about all that? Nobody speaks. British people, Jindabad, that's all they'll speak. What do you want to study? I want to study, go to London and study, London School of Economics. Okay, go and study, no problem, go and study, but don't lose your pride. Don't forget the facts. And when it comes to this topic, be very, very clear that what they did was wrong, full stop. Don't justify. So, oppression of peasants and artisans, they removed the handicrafts, that's why Gandhiji brought back that charkha and making. Our material would go from here to London, get stitched, come back here, we have to pay import, and we have to pay taxes, and we have to buy. Now tell me, what has that changed? Has that changed? In global world we are still doing, no? We are not saying don't do that. In a global world you might do that for economic reasons, but still the feeling will be made in India, made in USA, made in London. I know so many of our own clothing companies, they supply things there, they put the brand label and come back. How much price, my God, we pay for that. So how much wealth they drained, how much artisans, how many handicrafts, all that got oppressed. They did so much of conversions, even today is happening, silently. And very important stuff is First World War. Whenever First World War is spoken about, does anybody mention contribution of India? How many million soldiers died, do you know? How many million soldiers went there? India has given 10 million minimum. Nobody speaks about that. The sacrifice of the Indian soldiers who took part in World War I. And then again, later also. So, these are things which has destroyed this country terribly. Industrialization and the imports, and of course divide and rule. Now the purpose is that in this kind of a declined environment, right from Vedic times to invasions to the British times, the whole cultural decline that has happened, in that environment, Gurudev was born. So this is the puja room of Gurudev. This is the original picture of his, that's why it is very hazy and the resolution is very bad. Because it's this much picture only we have. Original is only this much. But this is how it was. This is the picture of Chandra Kaladhara. So in his house, the temple, every evening there is a puja that happens. So he was born on 8th May 1916 at 7:30 p.m. in Ernakulam. Then he is the father. Who is the father? What is his name? Kuttan Mena. She is the mother. Parukutti Mena. Parukutti Amma. She passed away very young. So the Amma who is behind, Kauchu Amma, she brought up Gurudev. And this is Gurudev, and these are two sisters. So in this house, the rule was every evening there Lalita Sahasranam will happen, Vishnu Sahasranam will happen, puja, bhajan, 2 hours minimum. So the child has to sit through all that. 2 hours, imagine. Try taking Balvihar class 45 minutes. In that, if you don't do activity, craft, bhajan, etc. in a 45-minute to 1 hour class, you have to engage them. Try telling them only story. Very difficult, can't engage. And 2 hours. But he used to sit because no prayer, no supper. So he has to sit. So what he used to do at that time? Close the eyes, visualize the form of Lord Shiva and imagine it in the mind. And if the form disappears, again open the eyes, stare at the form, again close the eyes, again visualize. What he was practicing at that time is called Tratak and Sagur Sakar Rup Dhyan. Tratak means to stare. So one has to stare at the form of the Lord and observe each and every part carefully. Notice every detail, register it in the mind. And then close the eyes, invoke that form. That is Sagun Sakar Roop. So he used to say, I was playing hide and seek with Lord Shiva. So that was his childhood, and he was born in this kind of a very ritualistic environment. So from a very young age he lost respect for spirituality because he thought it is only these rites, rituals, long pujas and boring stuff. And also at these times nobody is giving answers. So this panel is completely about decline of the culture. We have tried to indicate some aspects here. The purpose of this is only for us to feel that many of these things are even today existing and how you and I can contribute to revival. So the third question was how to revive the culture, right? No, fourth was that. Third one was? Fourth one was what Gurudev did. So what Gurudev did is, we will go through that whole thing. But the third one is how to revive the culture, bring back the sense of oneness, bring back the sense of love, and then followed by the values. So all that these masters did, whether they wrote commentaries, established temples or institutions, is to bring that sense of oneness. Now we come to this part, that if this is the decline, what was the glorious culture which we need to know? What were our roots? Apart from that knowledge of oneness which is philosophical, actually what were the roots? How did we live in a glorious culture? That is this panel, the Vedic Saraswati culture. So you have to turn this. So from where did the word Hindu come? From river Sindhu. Okay. So that is being told to us. That river Sindhu, the people who were staying around, they were called Sindhus, and Persians who came, they could not pronounce Sa, so they became Hindu. But our culture is called Sanatana Dharma. That's the name of our culture. It's not Hindu culture, it is Sanatana Dharma. Why it is called Sanatana Dharma? Because the knowledge that, the truth that culture has revealed, or the goal of human life which this culture speaks about, is the eternal truth. And this eternal truth is revealed in the source of our culture. So if we say that the book for Christians is Bible, book for the Muslims is the Quran, what is the book for the Hindus? Gita? See, in our case, we have vast literature. Gita may be popular today. But what is the source of this culture? Gita came much later. Upanishads, if you say, that is a philosophy. Vedas. The philosophy of the Upanishads, the Vedanta philosophy is found in the Upanishads, which is found in the end portion of the Vedas. So the source book of our culture is the Vedas. We should never forget that. How many Vedas are there? 4 Veda or 1 Veda? I think these are youngsters who don't know today's culture. Simply they are saying one, you see. They don't know. All 4 are one only. There is a feeling of oneness in all 4. ऋग्वेद से चुहे चुहे तो हम भाई 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 नहीं, हम एक ही है. भाई भाई में 2 होता है. You are me, I am you. तत्वमेव त्वमेव तत्. So the idea is that Veda as a book can be 4, but Vid means to know, knowledge. Veda means knowledge. As knowledge, it is one. Why knowledge is one? Because it is speaking about that which is absolute one. So our culture is based on this Sanatan, is based on this identity that Jiva, Jagat and Ishvara are one. And to experience that oneness, that is what we spoke in the morning as fulfillment. To experience that oneness is the whole lifestyle. The entire lifestyle is designed towards taking us to an experience of oneness, away from emptiness into the state of fulfillment. So that culture is the Vedic culture. And that's why we said that the root of our culture of this country is Vedanta, is Advaita. Because that's what is the core competence of this country. If we say the core competence of USA, what will you say? Technology. China? Production, manufacturing. Technology, I mean the competency of India? You may say spirituality, but we have to say in spirituality there are thousands of parts in this country. What is the core competency? Vedic knowledge also talks about many things. It also talks about Ayurveda, Dhanurveda, Gandharva Veda, Sthapatya Shastra. Advaita Vedanta is the core, is the crux, the feeling of oneness, surrender of the ego, identification with the Supreme, that is the one. Now that philosophy, where did it grow? Vedas are by themselves timeless. There are books which are revealed knowledge, they are not written by human beings. All knowledge that way, even scientific knowledge, a lot of it is a revelation. Law of gravity, Archimedes principle, they all are revelations to the scientists. So Gurudev used to say rishis are subjective scientists. Their subject of research is human beings, like, and the laboratories are forests, sitting quietly there alone, meditating, they are doing that. And they have come to, so different aspects about life they have come to discover, and ultimately they have also discovered oneness. So this oneness is the knowledge which is the word Saraswati. Literally the word Saras means a pool, pools of water. Saraswati means these lots of pools of water which are flowing. Saraswati is the river on the banks of which the rishis who are staying, the revelations have happened to the rishis on the banks of Saraswati. And the compositions also that the rishis made. So, like Puranas, Itihasas, many other books are written on the banks of Saraswati. Where is my computer? Just get there. Here. So this Saraswati culture is the source of our culture. Vedic culture is from Saraswati. Vedic culture is grown up on the banks of Saraswati river. Is Saraswati a fact or not? Today we may not see. And for a long time we were told to believe that Saraswati doesn't exist. And even the attempts by great scholars, research scholars and archaeologists, etc., who are giving proof, authentic proof that this is the track of Saraswati river, was not being accepted. Because obviously there are a lot of vested interests in that. But if Saraswati becomes a reality, if the knowledge of Saraswati comes to people, lot of today's politics and education, many things will get shaken up. We'll see how. So first and foremost we have to understand that our culture is called Vedic Saraswati culture or Sanatan Dharma. These are two names, not Hindu. And Vedic culture is a global culture. Much before people spoke about globalization, Vedic culture is a culture where people from this country have gone out. You see Cambodia, you see Southeast Asia, you see so many of these places. Up till Gandhar, which is today's Kandahar, Afghanistan, all that. Even Nepal, Bhutan, Burma, all of that. Fully. The reach of that Vedic culture was very vast. They have crossed the seas, they have taken the knowledge, and the idea was to live in harmony. They did not attack people, they spread the knowledge. So, this Vedic Saraswati culture, how do we prove now that this is the source of our culture? If you see in your book, we have given you some factual details about how Saraswati exists. What are the proofs? So this is the root of Saraswati river. Bandar Pooch Massif is a huge glacier. then Manasarovar, Kapal Shikhar. From there it originates. You will see, today you will see Saraswati river at this Mana village in Badrinath. It flows. In those times, it was a very, very powerful torrential glacial river. Sometimes the width of that river is 20 kilometers. Can you imagine? Width is 20 kilometers. It's not like width is only 20 kilometers. Massive. What flow? So it flows from Badrinath to Kurukshetra, Kalibangan, and then comes to this down here, Somnath, Arabian Sea. So which are the states it covers? Himachal,
हरियाणा, राजस्थान,
राजस्थान,
गुजरात.
Gujarat.
गुजरात,
Some part of it also goes in today's Pakistan. No, Arabian Sea is not Maharashtra, even Gujarat has Arabian Sea. So it doesn't come into Maharashtra. From Somnath it goes out to Arabian Sea. It doesn't come into Maharashtra. So from left, from the top, from the right, down towards the left, from the top north, down towards the west. That's the route of Saraswati. We have been generally told that Ganga, Yamuna, Saraswati is the Prayag. Saraswati doesn't flow there. Only Ganga and Yamuna. Yamuna is supposed to be a tributary of Saraswati. That's why they say that. And of course there they say the Saraswati Gupta roop mein hai. Because there the symbolism is you are that Saraswati. Because Saraswati is not just a river. We worship Saraswati as a deity and Saraswati as self-knowledge, absolute truth also. So this Saraswati river, there is maximum reference of the river Saraswati in the Vedas, more than even Ganga. Because Saraswati was the most prominent river. What have we written there? 72 times she is mentioned in the Vedas, apart from all these, including Meghadut and Zendavesta. Zendavesta is that Parsis or Zoroastrians, unka ek book. Even they have mentioned in that. So the idea is that this river was a very powerful river, the source of our culture. So when people ask which is the most ancient Indian civilization, what will we generally say? Indus Valley civilization. That is because we are taught. And what is the proof of that? Mohenjo-daro, Harappa. So some of these seals, this picture is a very important picture. This one and this one and this dance, this lady with this bangles. These three are proofs to show that this culture was there much before Mohenjo-daro. They use some of these to prove Mohenjo-daro. But this is existing before Mohenjo-daro. What is the timeline of Mohenjo-daro and Harappa? Indus Valley civilization is how many? Which BC?
1500 BC.
1500 BC. That is Mohenjo-daro and Harappa civilization. That's the latest they will say. That's the earliest, sorry. How old is Saraswati? 10,000 BC. 10,000. So, she was the source of Sapta Sindhu and dried up around 1900 BC. So even 1500 BCE to say that Mohenjo-daro was the oldest civilization is wrong. Because before that is existing, Saraswati. Saraswati dried up around 1900 only. 1500 if they say is Mohenjo-daro, 400 years now after that. Proofs are there or not? 400 years it will not just, everything will collapse and disappear. So our purpose is to understand this fact that why have we been told about Indus Valley being the oldest? Is because there is a vested interest in that. To make us understand that your culture is only this many years old and what are you bragging about your culture so much? And who brought this culture? That also is not yours. That has come from outside. The proof of Saraswati existing dismisses the most important theory which has divided us, and that is this Aryan invasion. That Aryans came from outside India. They brought the culture. They are the people who came from Central Asia. They are the barbaric tribes, tribal people. They brought this knowledge. They are the white-skinned, fair-skinned people, and they pushed all these natives here down to the south. That has been fabricated. And why was that done? To make us feel low, inferior, and to conquer us. Who created this theory? This great man, Max Muller, whom we revere in this country today as putting up all the Max Muller bhavans everywhere. He translated the Vedas. His translation of the Vedas, for every page, he was paid 9 times more than what a normal translator was paid at that time. And what was the agenda? Macaulay and Max Muller together, their agenda is to conquer this country by breaking their spiritual backbone. So these are his words. One thing we should know here is there is one popular letter going around. I have travelled across the length and breadth of the country. I have not found one beggar, one thief. That is not factually correct. That is somebody has cooked it up. Some portions of it which are correct is what we have put here. This is what he has written to his wife. Max Muller has written to his wife in there's a book called Letters of Max Muller. In that it is there. In the life and letters of Friedrich Max Muller, it is there. So you read what is written there. India is much riper for Christianity than Rome or Greece were at the time of Saint Paul. India has been conquered once, but India must be conquered again, and the second conquest should be a conquest by education. My translation of the Vedas will hereafter tell to a great extent on the fate of India and on the growth of millions of souls in that country. It is the root of their religion, and it is the only way of uprooting all that has sprung from it during the last 3,000 years. Just see that. What did he do that for? To uproot the Vedas. What did he write in the Vedas? Like this word Aryan is there in the Vedas, but the word Aryan in the Vedas means a gentleman. That's the meaning. But then he will make it in a wrong way. Like that many words. By simply misunderstanding, misinterpreting some words and putting the philosophy in a wrong light, they made us feel inferior. And intellectuals read all his translations because this is the only translation of Veda available. We are to blame because Brahmins did not give the knowledge to people. And they removed Sanskrit, the English people. So now what is left? English. So I'll read whatever is available and then pride myself on that and then condemn the culture. So this, Max Muller, Macaulay, when they created this, you see, it was created in 1853 in one meeting. Royal Asiatic Society, one meeting happened where they decided to create this theory. Sitting far away. Do you know Max Muller never visited India? Sitting there in Germany, that man translated the entire Veda, conquered one entire generation after generation after generation for how many? 200-300 years. 1853, no? Now we are almost 150 years. Without stepping into this country, that man conquered. All the others came, fought, shed blood, killed, destroyed everything. They couldn't achieve that much what this man achieved sitting out there. That's why they say what? Pen is mightier than sword. This is the example of that.
How did he learn Sanskrit?
He learned Sanskrit. There, that's what I'm telling you. Germans are more well versed in Sanskrit than you and I. Even today. So we have to understand some of these facts very clearly. See, we are not trying to demonize anybody or try to pull down somebody, but we don't even know what has happened to us. It's like some disease which we are affected by. We are terminally ill. Will you worship the germs of cancer? Will you glorify? Wow. That's what we are doing. It's eating away into our glory, and we are glorifying that. So this is what Max Muller did. So the idea was very simple. Discredit Indian culture, devalue Hindus, divide India, and they disgusted the whole world. Hitler killed so many Jews because of his Aryan pride. You see that karma, how it comes. One German only sat and translated. And so many Germans also got killed. Because this Hitler had that pride. So he fought. He massacred so many Jews and Germans. And he was not a German also. Who was he? Austrian. Sad, no, it is how just a misinterpreted word has destroyed so many lives. Aryan, just one word. And Aryan superiority. People name their kids like that. That they mean gentlemen, that's still okay. They should not say, Aryan means I'm superior than you are a Dravidian. So this is what this culture has done to us. I mean this theory has done to our culture. What is the glory of our culture? It is today, Vedic culture is the oldest living culture even today. We are living it even now. It's not that okay, Vedic time now it was cheap. Right now we are living Hinduism. There is no Hinduism separate from this. This is the Vedic culture. Every other culture has perished, which was there of that time. From 10,000 BCE, few cultures were there. Greek culture, Mesopotamian culture, Egyptian culture, Mayan culture. How many? You can name Mesopotamian, whatever. Babylonian, Sumerian culture, all in the museum. Some places museum also may not be there. This culture has gone through a lot of decadence, but we are still living today. And I have given you just a few proofs. See this girl, she is wearing bangles now. This is found in Indus in the Saraswati time. Even today you find or not this. A lot of Rajasthani women wear no. And even construction laborers you will find some of them. Same culture. This is a artifact found where this person is having sindoor. Sindoor is being applied by women even today or not. Namaste. We are following even today. 10,000 years before a practice is Namaste. Even today we are saying Namaste. We greet each other with that only. This is the dice which we use. This is the form of Shivalinga. Even today we use Shivalinga. These are yogic postures. Even we are following yogic postures even today. These are just a few examples. There are a lot of them like this, which prove that this is culture not only which was there that time, which is being even lived today. And this external symbolism is only the deeper reflection of a mindset, the philosophical attitude. Some of them may not know today those philosophical attitudes that all of us are one. The divinity in you is the divinity in me. That may not be known to everybody. But that's the point of reviving. So when we revive the culture, that's the point. To make people aware that you belong to that glorious tradition. And what you are doing is, this is the beauty of that. So this is Saraswati culture. Here we have given the media reports on how much work has happened so far to find the trail of Saraswati. If you see this last line here, these are all the proofs to show that Saraswati is a fact and Aryan invasion is not a fact. None of these proofs, Saraswati civilization itself is a proof Aryan invasion never happened. Archaeologically, there are enough proofs to say that Aryan invasion never happened because there are no signs of war, destruction, weapons in any of these archaeological sites. If war has happened, it will be there or not. There is no mention of any of the rivers of these Persian people or of these Persian people's geography. If they have written the Vedas, will they not write about their culture? If this is where we come from, this is our land, we came here, none of that is there. It's all description of our country only. Archaeology doesn't support, linguistic doesn't support. If you do linguistic analysis also, the Vedic literature which is there is the Sanskrit literature of Vedic times. It's not the Persian people brought. And also the linguistics in terms of Tamil, Sangam literature and all that, the Dravidian literature has no mention of Aryan invasion. Suppose people have been pushed. Will we not, right? You know, we were earlier living there and now we have been pushed here and these people tormented us and now we are living. No, there is no such mention. And Sangam literature is supposed to be one of the oldest literature. No, the word Dravidian is not wrong and the word Aryan also is not wrong. Every Dravidian is also an Aryan by the meaning that is a gentleman. And the word Dravidian is not wrong because the people who are staying in Dravid Pradesh are called Dravidians, which is the entire Deccan. And little more than that, Vindhyas and little above that also.
Kauravas, Pandavas were considered to be Aryans, no?
That is what has been taught to us. Considered to be Aryans means what?
Fair-skinned people, so to say.
See, skin color has nothing to do with the race of this separate race who came from outside, and this skin color in this country can be different or not. Right now all of us are born here in this land only, nobody came from outside. Our skin color is all different, no? So it is not that the people living in one country all have same skin color. But it depends on climatic conditions and many other factors. So even if they are fair-skinned people, it is not that they are come from outside. They are natives of this land. So this is about Saraswati River. This panel is actually because we have space constraints. Otherwise, what Saraswati culture is, one can depict it most gloriously. If you want to know that in a more grand way, in a more interesting way or a more inspiring way, go to Akshardham in Delhi. There is a Saraswati River boat ride. Here we don't have space, otherwise we could have put a nice boat. जगह ही नहीं है. थोड़ा सा झरना डाल दिया इधर. चलो सरस्वती रिवर. This is Ganga and Saraswati symbolically for us. कुछ तो बह रहा है. पता तो चले लोगों को कि भाई सरस्वती है. Otherwise, you don't know only that Saraswati was the river existing. So if you go to Delhi now, don't miss. How many of you have gone to Akshardham? Please go. You are all Indians. All of us are Indians. Akshardham is a pride of India. Thanks to Swaminarayan people and hats off to them that they chose to do that in Delhi. And they have depicted the glory of Saraswati culture beautifully. And what a grand temple. And the entire temple is managed, funded by only their volunteers. So many of them, they are carpenters, tailors. From whatever waste that they have, they will make certain things, sell it, and then give that money. And they will volunteer to be there, do seva there. So visitors come, they take them around. It's such a huge complex it is. And there is a list of people who are willing to go and serve. 2 months, 3 months in advance you have to give, I will come from this date to this date and I will stay there and I will offer my seva. That's the beauty of their culture. That feeling for the community, for the culture, for the country is there, and they go and serve. They don't ask, नहीं मुझे time नहीं है, मैं 2 घंटे आऊँ तो चलेगा क्या? Days together they go and stay there because they feel that this is my contribution to my culture, this is my debt. This culture has given me so much, what did I give back to this culture? What is my contribution to protect and preserve this culture? Here is the last part of this panel is all the great achievements, some of them, just not all, very few of them we have put here, scientific achievements of the people of Saraswati culture. So remember, Saraswati culture is not only that 10,000 BCE time, it is even now going on. So all these great people, some of them are very old, some of them are little recent also. We have put all of these people here, Aryabhatta and Brahmagupta and all that also, 600 AD, 800 BCE and all that. Up till that past, we don't have many records of 10,000 BCE and all, but some of them we have here. What we have also is some of the compositions. Today, luckily, there is this institute, Indian Institute of Science and Heritage. I have that book. They have printed nice books of how in mathematics, in astronomy, in chemistry, in physics. What all the Indian scientists have discovered with the shlokas they have given, and with the timeline and with the name. This person in this time has discovered this with the proper Sanskrit shloka. So all that if we understand, the idea is to become proud of our country, proud of our culture. This is the culture which gave to this country, this world, highest standards. Whether it's in art, architecture, music, literature, dance, anything. The standards that the Saraswati culture people set, unimaginable things in those times they have done. Innovation, India was known for innovation. You look at all these temples, every temple has some unique thing. Some temple shadow will not fall on the ground. Some temple one pillar is hanging but there is no support down there. In some temple there is, the play of light is in such a way that that diffraction of light or something. The Chaya Lingam, no? Using the pillars and the light, the Lingam image will be seen by the shadow. Somewhere in South only. Forgot.
Andhra.
Somewhere. I had sent one video of that.
Andhra Pradesh.
Andhra it is there. Many such beautiful aspects are there. I'm just talking about temples. But there is so much of science hidden in many other aspects of our country. So purpose of this whole panel depiction is it should inspire us to probe into the origins of our country, our culture, to find out more, to understand, and to support those kind of initiatives which will help to bring this back. So much work is happening. Foreigners, they come here and they do work, and they are awestruck by the beauty of this culture. There's a book called The Lost River by Michel Danino. He's a foreigner. He's come to India. There's another person called David Frawley. He's taken an Indian name, Vamadev Shastri. He has written books on the invasion that never was, Aryan invasion. And people in India, they don't bother about that. Our political system is based on what? Some of the political systems are based on Aryan and Dravidian, which never existed. The difference only never existed. So there are many such things are there about this country and this culture. So Gurudev was born in an environment where this knowledge was not available. So here you have Gurudev's life part, that Balan did his education in Sri Ram Verma Boys School. But we will not write about how the Indian kings were, what achievement they had. Maximum we will know is one or two names. Rana Pratap, Tipu Sultan, that also is glorified. Vedic culture, caste system. So we have to wake up. A lot of change needs to happen in many of these areas: education, politics, management, science, everywhere. So for now we will stop here, break for lunch, and we will come back. See, this is a bull with a hump. This bull is only native of this land. And you see this picture of this, the cart, no? The terracotta cart excavated at Kalibangan. So this is a significance of the wheel. That 10,000 years before, these people knew what is a wheel, how to move things with using the wheel, and these animals were of that time. So they have found these two, this animal and that one, in both Indus Valley as well as Saraswati. So this Saraswati civilization, more than, I don't remember exact number, more than 2,500 sites of the Indus Valley civilization are all on the banks of Saraswati only. So what we are calling today as the Indus Valley civilization is actually Saraswati Sindhu civilization. This picture I will come back to you. I will have to do, I forgot now what this picture exactly represents. I will come back to you because it is there in the... this is, we have just depicted in general. See, Indians used to do sea travel. So we have put a Matsya Yantra also. That is supposed to be Nalanda and Takshashila, biggest universities. In agriculture, crisscross style of farming, they used to follow. You know, this roof, this drainage system, and then this modular type of buildings. These are all depicted here. That's the significance. How very well structured town planning basically. 10,000 years before they were doing town planning, irrigation system, drainage system properly. Even today our nalas get blocked up when the rain comes. 10,000 years before these people knew proper systems and how they have managed that whole system. This one, no? This is what? This is the symbolism. This is the Takshashila Nalanda University, the center of knowledge. These are the yogic postures. These are artifacts found in Saraswati civilization, the sites, and these are the postures which we are following even today. 10,000 years before, just imagine to carry on a traditional practice for 10,000 years. What does it take to sustain a practice for 10,000 years? If we do today something, it won't last even 2 years. Things change so fast, no? 10,000 years they have managed to sustain this thing, generation after generation after generation. I'll give a simple example. I am born and brought up in Chennai. On Friday, whenever I used to go to school, all these girls will be yellow on their face. They'll put turmeric here. Manjal they call, manjal. Full yellow will be the face. 5 years down the line, 7 years down the line, which girl is doing that today? They'll just put turmeric cream. They'll not put, otherwise you not. Kolam they used to put, no? How many girls today will not put kolam? Few people only will know. Majority will not say. Or they will learn. For the sake of learning, they learn in the book. Very nice, no? Put dots. Keep doing. Huh? Not the fingers. No, that is, if they use the paintbrushes also is great. Nowadays direct pattern is there, you just put now on that, pull it. Put it. What do you call that? Production system. Like in a production you have 1 unit, 2 unit, 3 unit, like that. Yeah, this is the first one. Sushruta did the nose oroplasty, it is called. Nose replacement. People knew how to live without a nose in Ramayana time only. शूर्पणखा का नाक काट दिया लेकिन मर नहीं गई वो. That's the glory of our culture. Without nose and ears also, we know how to live. You know many such examples. Head transplant. Do you know head transplant has happened? Head transplant. Ganpati was in our culture. I am talking today's science. Head transplant has been done. First head transplant has happened. You find on Facebook, it's there. They actually have transplanted the head. So, yeah, I'm not joking, but it's happened. It has happened. So now we will not know कौन क्या है. ये किसका body है, किसका head है. I am telling you, take moksha and go away. Come back here, mad world it is going to be. कौन किसका head, किसका पैर, किसका सर, we have no idea. What the world is going to be too much. Scientific development has happened, but it has many other consequences. Anyway, right now consequence will be if we don't go, food will not be available. Go eat food. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha. You can go, have rest, come back by 2.